with us. So I want to welcome everybody to today's meeting of the Physician Research Council for Ochsner. We have a fair amount of data to share and things to talk about. So we're excited about that. We're going to start with Joey Biggio and Nick. We're going to go through some evolution of health research that's starting now. Joey, can you see what we've got up there? And can you take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So sorry I'm not over there in person. My meeting over at Baptist ran late, and I didn't want to be stuck on Claiborne Avenue or Jefferson Highway trying to do this from an iPhone. So I've had the privilege of serving as the interim chief scientific officer since Mark Roberts retired at the end of April. And I've gotten to talk to several of you over the course of the last few months, and just want to kind of go through and update people on some things of where we're going. So go ahead to the next slide, please. So just some leadership updates. So Dr. Nneka Ifejika will begin in the role of Chief Scientific Officer on September 3rd. Dr. Ifejika has her MD and MPH from the University of North Carolina and is a physical medicine and rehabilitation physician, where she completed a residency at Baylor. And she has been at University of Texas at Southwestern in Dallas since 2018. And she has been very active in research, and her areas of expertise have really focused on stroke rehabilitation, neurorehabilitation, transitions of care, and health disparities. And she has done extensive work and received numerous accolades for her innovative work in this area, and especially with her work with the underserved populations. So we're happy to have Dr. Ifejika joining us in a little bit more than a month. You know, as you all can imagine, there will be a lot for her to learn about Ochsner, our overall system, kind of the way things are. And so we have been working to develop an onboarding plan that will be, there's a 30, 60, 90, and 100-day onboarding plan. And we will be working on setting up meetings for her with many of you over that time. And we will have group meetings as well. Once Dr. Ifejika gets here, I will transition into a role as the Vice Chief Scientific Officer, and really will be helping with maintaining those relationships with the physician investigators. So I'm not going away. You'll continue to see me, and I'll be reaching out a lot to all of you and become sort of more a primary point of contact as that interface between the physician researchers, the physician research leaders, and research administration, so that Dr. Ifejika can focus on a lot of the more administrative tasks and help set vision, strategy, and things like that, and working with the other administrative team within research administration. So go ahead to the next slide, please.
I think Nicole has a question before we go ahead.
It's a comment, Joey. I just wanted to let you, I met with, it's Dr. Ifejika. I met with her a couple weeks ago. I had heard her name pronounced both ways, so I asked her if she wouldn't mind clarifying. And it's Ifejika, so I just wanted to correct that. We had so many people, on the Zoom here. That's how she pronounces her name.
And did you ask her how she says her first name? Because I have a friend who has the exact same spelling of the name, and she says Anika.
Oh, I actually did not, but I called her Nneka and she didn't correct me, but maybe we should ask.
All right, now we're gonna have to spell things out phonetically for everybody so we get it right.
Yeah, Jody, I think it's Nanika. You got it correctly. I kind of know her first name. That's correct.
Okay. All right. So just in terms of some other updates, I think many people know this. Daniela Radu, our HRPP director, left Ochsner in early June. There is currently a search ongoing for a new director of HRPP, and Dr. Efron is leading this search. Right now, we have an interim acting director on loan from Huron. His name is Liam Harrison, and he is keeping things moving forward and working to support the analysts and making sure that we have all the regulatory things done and are getting the approvals so that there's not any big gaps in where we need to be. There are several candidates who are in the process of interviewing, and the hope is to be able to get through this process in the next 1 to 2 months and identify the right candidate. So more to come on that. Johanna Vail, who was the clinical research director, who was handling a lot of the research outside of the New Orleans area, left Ochsner in early July. Right now, we have not backfilled that position and have not posted the position yet. We're reassessing the overall research hierarchy prior to doing that so that we can work on determining the best ways to provide permanent coverage. For right now, Ochsner Pearson is overseeing Baton Rouge and Lafayette, and Connie Nalowak is overseeing Shreveport, with both interim reporting to Nicole until we figure out what the long-term structure is going to be. And then just for information for everybody to know, just so that if you have any issues in the time and need to know who to contact, Maria Gloth, who's the manager for Baptist CTU and multidisciplinary medical specialties, just started a 4-month maternity leave with the birth of her daughter within the last couple weeks. And Deanna Broussard is covering and helping support the team over at Baptist with multi-specialty medicine. And then Elsa from Neurosciences is out for the month, so Nicole is going to be providing some direct oversight for neuro in her absence. All right, next slide, please. So these, I just wanted to go over these quickly just so that people understand what has been put out as the roadmap for the research strategies for the next few years. And some of these are certainly, are things we are aiming for. Some may be a little bit more reach goals, but all are in the direction we want to be moving over the next 3 years. And you can see, it really revolves around a lot of the things that we've been talking about. Is that, first is developing a robust research faculty model that will work with Exocom. We want to work to increase the accessibility and inclusivity of clinical trials by expanding our research sites to community centers, fostering the growth of neuroscience research through strategic collaboration with the Neuroscience Institute as we're making the investment to build that facility. Another area of priority is creating a focused fundraising campaign to create endowed professorships to financially support academics and develop an endowment to support research. And then also another area of strategic focus is optimizing our existing partnership with MD Anderson to increase our impact in cancer research and ultimately work to develop an NCI strategy. One of our other strategic priorities has been to open a dedicated clinical trials unit at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. That's in a bit of a state of flux, so we may be modifying that. But if you see it out there printed, I wanted you to know that that has been something that's been identified, but that may be something, depending on how things progress, we may pivot from that and really just focus on how do we make the emerging therapies more accessible to communities across all the Ochsner facilities and network in the regions we serve. This slide is just really to make sure everybody is aware, and so that if you get questions about it, escalate questions on this to your research managers and research directors, or certainly escalate them to Nicole or Nick or me. But just in case you haven't heard this, the Department of Labor changed the minimum salary requirements for what somebody could be considered exempt or non-exempt employees. And that just basically means whether they qualify for overtime or not. The old threshold was 35,568. They changed it on July 1st to almost $44,000. And so what that meant was that we had people who were salaried employees now are reclassified and were considered exempt, now reclassified to non-exempt, and so would be eligible for overtime. In January of 2025, it's going to increase further. And so this really can start to impact some of the positions. And this, where we've seen this potentially cause some strife, is that, there have been throughout the organization employees who feel like now they're being treated differently, or somebody's decided they need to have their contract more or anything like that. And I think, why I wanted to bring this up is to be able to just make sure everyone's aware that, number one, this is not an Ochsner issue. This is a federal issue, that it is not meant to, downplay anybody's contributions, their roles, or whether their time needs to be tracked or anything like that. This is, about current labor law. The one thing that, HR and finance and research leadership is working through things is that because of these changes, it certainly can impact how we look at the ability to do certain studies, because there were certain things that we could do when we had exempt employees in terms of how they were working and comp time and things like that, that now with these new labor laws, we can't do that. Now it does turn into requiring payments for overtime. And so we'll have to start looking at that. And we're trying to develop some plans for how we can adapt and how we need to start looking at approaching studies that require extended coverage and things like that in the future. So a lot more to come on that, but certainly those are the kind of things that when we have studies like this, it's important to start engaging in discussion with the research, with your dyad partners, to make sure that we're addressing all the potential challenges and issues. And those will be things that as new studies come up, we'll have budget issues to really look into.
Hey, Joey?
Yes.
Hey, is that being built into the budgets currently then, going forward, the correct labor budget?
Yes.
Have you guys already proactively built that into your budgets, or are you guys?
Yeah, we've got it built in.
Okay, so stuff that's occurring now should be okay?
Yeah, that's, we're going to be looking at labor laws. I mean, we're going to be looking at the labor so that they don't work a lot of overtime. So
Right.
it works about the same.
Okay,
So yeah, we're managing it a different way.
okay.
All right, good. Next slide. And so that's a perfect segue. And I'm going to turn it over to Nick. And he's just going to go over a little bit of stuff with regards to research finance. There's a lot of details here. We're not going to get in the weeds on the details, but really to give an overview of kind of where some of the discussions that people are going to be having with y'all, with everyone, are going to be going.
Okay. This is actually one of Randy's slides, not one of my slides. But what I want to highlight here is this trend line for our sponsored revenue for sponsored trials. Over the past year has been heading in a negative direction. And I'll show you in the next few slides that we're actually projected to lose quite a bit over this year unless we start making some changes in the way we operate. Do you have to click on the stays right. Perfect, thank you. So we've got several strategies to try and reverse course and move things in the right direction. we designed a Kaizen-inspired REDCap tracker. This is a tool that was developed by Dan Fort and Ken Bodie, which will allow us to monitor the progress of every study that's in startup and alert us when things get stuck at any particular spot so we can move things on. We're including managers and supervisors in our monthly reporting, our monthly research meetings to provide the big picture so that they get the COE level financial data that they haven't been getting before, and we're providing it in an easy to understand format that I'll show you in just a moment. We're training as a group and individually to identify any underperforming studies. This is with regards to enrollment and finance. And we're working through examples in each one of our meetings using Tableau on how we can complete these deep dives. And finally, we're identifying characteristics of top and bottom performing studies so that we can learn from these examples on how to best operate. So this is an example of the easier to understand financial presentations that we've been using. One of the issues we had with the budget projections that we have to deal with is that they are based on performance in the same month in the prior year. And of course, you know, revenue goes up and down, up and down. So sometimes you can get a $20,000 surplus the next month that looks like it's in a positive margin, positive net margin. But then the next month, that same surplus can look like it's loss against budget because of how studies performed in the prior year. So in the upper left-hand corner shows research revenue over the past, or for this year. The blue line, and instead of showing the actual for the prior year, what we've done is just average the revenue over the entire year. So you can see a steady accumulation of revenue rather than that jagged accumulation we showed before. So 2023 average is shown in blue. 2024 actual, you can see in gray, and that shows what we've done this year so far. And then based on that, this year's performance so far, we're making a projection out to the end of 2024, showing that we're actually going to have, we're projecting a slight increase in revenue over 2023, but it falls well short of what we're budgeting for this fiscal year. Unfortunately, expenses shown in the upper right-hand corner are also increasing, and they're increasing faster than our revenue is increasing. So if you look down on the bottom left-hand corner, we're actually projecting a net margin, a negative net margin this year that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.5 million. And it's not just revenue that we're struggling with, accruals are down as well. And if we continue to accrue patients to studies at the same rate that we've been doing this year so far, we're going to end up about 20% short of where we were last year. So one of the things I mentioned we've been doing is trying to identify characteristics of studies that perform really well and those that don't perform so well. This is just an example of something that we shared in one of those research MOR meetings with managers and supervisors. And it shows we've got several studies that are underperforming. And one of the first things we noticed when we started looking at these is that the underperforming studies seem to have a lot of time devoted to pre-screening for patients. So we decided to look at that in a little bit more detail. With the assistance of Beth and Randy, we actually pulled data from Encore on all the studies that we have that are open to accrual right now. And we were able to pull out the information on the amount of time we spent pre-screening. And the data is shown in the plot over on the left-hand side and then summarized in this chart right here. Basically, for studies where we are pulling in more than $100,000 in revenue this year, we're averaging about 13.7 hours screening per patient. For those that are pulling in $25,000 to $50,000 a year, we're averaging 22 hours screening time per patient. Those that are bringing in 0 to 25,000, we're up to 43 hours screening per patient. And then as for those studies that are losing money, those that are losing up to $25,000, we're spending on average 78 hours per patient screening. Those that are losing between 25 and 50,000, we're almost up to 130 hours per patient. So this data is the plot for this data is shown in red right there, and the line for it crosses around 70 hours screening, pre-screening per patient. So we pulled a list of all the studies that have more than 70 hours screening time per patient. These are shown here. You don't actually have to look at the numbers up there. To summarize the most important things down at the bottom. First is that most of these have low accruals, all below expected, 1 or 2 patients enrolled maximum. The average lifetime to date loss for those studies that are in the negative here is about $30,000. And we're spending about 239 hours on average screening for a single patient in those studies. So for each hour we're spending screening, we're losing about $128. And for those studies where we're spending more than 70 hours and we're still making a little bit of profit, we're not making much. We're pulling in about $9,000 lifetime to date. We're spending 133 hours screening per patient. So for each hour we spend screening, we're getting about $65. Contrast that with the high-performing studies, which are shown in this table right here. First thing is that almost all of these studies have strong accruals. The average study lifetime to date is pulling in about $36,000, and we're only spending about 9 hours screening per patient. So for each hour spent screening these studies, we're gaining about $849. Now, if you took those 239 hours that we spent screening for a single patient on the previous slide and applied it to some of the studies here, we could have enrolled or helped 27 more patients get on trials and generated more than $200,000 of revenue instead of taking a loss. So just opening that up for discussion. Obviously, yes, please.
Is the screening efforts budgeted?
Randy, you might want to explain this. Screening, unfortunately, is not budgeted in the studies. Most sponsors will not allow you to put in time for that. So we try and spread it out in some of the other areas. And Randy, you might have a bit more information.
Yeah, for the most part, in the initial trials, you don't get paid for the screening. Then when the trial starts, then you expect some screening, but you're mainly only paid on the hours that on the accrual that you get and the ones that sign up. So what we do is we actually estimate some of that time to be able to put that into the budget based on what we get from the CRCs and the clinical teams giving us that information. Then we can put that in. But basically, as Nick said, they don't pay us for screening, they're paying us for the actual accrual.
But are your estimates then way off? Because if you're taking that estimated time for screening and incorporating that in your whole budget, you should be accounting for that in your total overall budget, right?
And we do. Go ahead.
But obviously not enough.
Right.
But
Well,
right now we are going back and looking to make sure that the budgets are constructed appropriately, because if you're not estimating correctly at the beginning, then you under budget, and that's part of the problem. Not all the problem, but part of the problem.
That's the goal of this exercise, is to identify studies that seem to be struggling with accruals or revenue, drill down into it and try and identify the causes of it. And obviously, this is one. We're spending too much time in pre-screening on these studies, and we're losing money as a consequence. So what we can start to do is flag those studies where we seem to be spending a lot of time in pre-screening and see if we can't find better ways to identify patients, or consider pivoting to other studies where we can add more impact and benefit on patients.
Nick, how do you calculate the screening time? Is that real screening time, or is it time spent on the study? Because if you spend X amount of time on the study and you enroll one patient, you could estimate that the screening time is very, very long. And if you enroll 500 patients, and you spend the same amount of time, your screening time is estimated to be less. Is it real screening time?
Our CRCs are required to log their time and effort on each study and describe what they're doing on those studies. So pre-screening is one of those things that they can check off.
We have a whole list of things to try to give us this kind of data. Now, of course, as anything, the data is only good as what's put into it, all right? But I think we've got enough people that have been doing it long enough that they know how to put the time in. So it gives us some sort of accuracy on the studies.
But there has to have been a miss on your estimate somewhere, right?
Well,
Because if they're putting in their time accurately, somebody's not incorporating that into the calculation for the budgets.
Well, so remember that when
And I get you're not gonna get all of it.
No, yeah, but I'm looking at, the ones he was looking at were onesies or twosies on the whole accrual. So these are hard to find, I think, patients on what we're looking for. The other thing is that our numbers are only as good as the numbers we actually get from the team, the protocol, because if we don't know what to put in there, then yes, it will be off. I will admit that 100%. But we don't know. We're not the scientists. We take the data from the study team to put it in. And I think that's even aside, because I think what we're looking at is we're spending a lot of time on things that are very hard to accrue, and there are not enough patients on there. So I think that's the main goal we're trying to point here is a lot of our efforts going on things we can't get enough money towards.
So have you looked at the efficacy of their screening and the accuracy of this?
So I think a lot of it is in feasibility. I think trying to really get an idea of how much time it's actually going to take to find one patient, you really have to really hone in on that. Well, because if you open a study and you think, this should be fairly straightforward, I think we'll be able to enroll 30 patients a year. And then when you actually start doing the work, you see your CRCs are like, these are really, really hard to find. And because the inclusion criteria are so narrow that we can't find these people. And so if you can figure that out on the front end, then you save yourself a lot of time.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, are those estimates of accruals in initial?
Sometimes they're inflated.
And there are, some large studies that Dr. Efron's right in front of me. So there might be a hypertension study where there's lots of people, right? And you're going to be drawing on a large pool, or there may be a transplant study that has, 3 people the whole year that are eligible. But you should be able to calculate what your true expected number is.
And a lot of those, we've actually gone back and looked at a lot of our accruals. And we did a study when Mark was here, and there was probably close to 100 studies, I think it was. I can't remember the exact number. And our budget was actually better than what the sponsors put out. And we actually had factored in about a 30 to 40% margin in there. All right. Now, I will say that when you look at some of these other studies, yeah, there are all kinds of reasons. Because if you look at every study and you dive into it, there could be reasons on why things took longer than they should have. All right. And I don't have the answers for you. All right. I wish I did.
Randy, Dr. Efron, do you mind if kind of like share our experience with a couple of trials that when we started, we had a trial that had a similar experience. It was like a lot of hours for screening. And the few things we learned from that, one was, others mentioned is contracting. Even if initially contracting is off, we learned that it's better to, after a few months, kind of watch the recruitment. And if we are not expecting and the trajectory is not going to be positive, we'll reach out to the sponsor and renegotiate or stop the trial. And the other part is the training of the CRCs. Because a lot of times, every study is different. Even if they are specialized in particular specialty, training by the physician to the CRC to look at particular criteria, or even initially help with the screening until the trial is on the track, it will save a lot of unnecessary screening, or I would say untargeted screening, and which is not efficient. So those things probably will help a lot. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect, but it might screen and decrease the loss.
Now, look, I think everybody is making some great comments, and I think, and I think this is exactly the dialogue that we want these data to start to stimulate, is start thinking about all the ways we can get better. And I think that Randy and Beth Kettering have worked to get a lot more transparency into the data we have to start making some decisions with. And look, the reason we didn't want to dig in and focus on all the specific numbers, but what we wanted to do is get everybody to start seeing these are the kind of data we're going to start looking at and start working with everyone to look at ways we can get better, because it is about efficiency. It is about feasibility. You know, all of us as investigators always overestimate the number of people we're going to get in trials because we're optimistic, we're excited, and that's the natural tendency. But we just have to realize we've got to start to bring it all in and think about how to synthesize it. So a lot more to come on this, and I really appreciate it. And you know, please, if you have other thoughts, suggestions, send them to me, Nick, and Nicole, and your dyad partners, because we want to hear them, and we really want to start working with everybody to make the whole process better.
Yeah, I want to echo that and say thank you to you guys for really drilling down on this information and analyzing it in a really sort of analytical way so that we can identify the signal within all of the various numbers. So we'll look forward to hearing more from the group. Shifting tack now a bit, I'd like to share with you all the results of the survey. This is much more sort of qualitative than quantitative, although I'm going to show some numbers, about sort of the status of research at Ochsner from the point of view of the researchers. As you'll remember, back in 2021, my predecessor, Bridget Bagger, who's on the line with us today, put together a survey that she called the Pulse Survey that asked all of the researchers at Ochsner about sort of their trials and tribulations and how to make things better. We took those data as a physician research steering committee, the PRSC, and various subgroups of that, analyzed the data and made some actions over the years. We wanted to see whether those actions have had a good or bad or indifferent effect on people's opinions. So this year we performed the Repulse survey, which I am happy to share with you guys the results today. So these were the methods that we used. I wanted to use because we are the research group, right? So I wanted to be able to compare apples to apples. So I used the same questions as in 2021, plus I added a few others regarding the residual fund changes, which were specifically made in response to the Pulse survey from 2021. And also to talk about the potential impact of future changes in order to educate the models going forward, including the model for research faculty model at Exicom, so that Joey et al. Can use that, and we can use it, I guess. It was both multiple choice and free text. It went to all of the members of the PRC, and also I sent it to the Centers of Excellence Research Medical Directors. And then with the talents of Dr. Jeff Burton, who's on the line with us today, thank you very much, Jeff, for putting together these data in a digestible way. So the way this is going to be displayed is there's going to be, for many of these slides, there's going to be two graphs. The first one will be on the left. It's going to be the data from 2021, and on the right will be 2024. In 2021, we had 58 respondents. This year, we had 48 respondents. You can see that the distribution of people's roles, whether they were a PI of clinical trial, observational trial, and or laboratory trials, were approximately the same between then and now. We got a lot of responses from all of the different centers of excellence. You see that all the COEs were represented. Question number 2 was, how satisfied are you with the research support provided to your department? That is the CRCs, research supervisors, regulatory coordinators, etc. You see the distribution there. On the top is non-applicable. I know it's difficult to see from maybe where you guys are, but on the top is not applicable, and then the bars are on the top is very satisfied, and on the bottom is very dissatisfied. So things that are higher up are better. You see the results from this year. no very dissatisfied, which is nice, and there's more people that fell into the satisfied category, but there were also fewer that were very dissatisfied. There's not an obvious signal here because there are just fewer in the extremes, but I do want to point out that in addition to having these categorical answers, there were also free text answers, and we have this for every one of these questions. I don't expect, I can't possibly read them all to you today because we don't have time for that, but we will have time to discuss it among the PRC, and among the PRSC when we're starting to put the rubber to the road. I want to go through the questions further here. So, please anybody can stop me or make comments about this as we go along, although we are a little bit pressed for time. How satisfied are you with the financial operations of clinical research? This was really sort of in the pits back in 2021. I am happy to report that we're looking better in this way. Thank you very much, Randy, and your team. I think things are going in the right direction. There's a lot of work to do, as we're pointing out, but I'm heartened by the fact that more people are satisfied with the financial operations of our research nowadays. How satisfied are you with pre-award processes, budgeting, and contracts for clinical trials? There was a large spread in 2021, and today more people are satisfied, but there are still a lot of people who are dissatisfied and even very dissatisfied, although fewer than in the past. How satisfied are you with the IRB at Ochsner? In the past, really very satisfied and satisfied were the predominant responses. There has been a lot of turnover in the IRB. We have a brand new director now in Mark Efron. There have been people coming in and out. Daniela Radu, who's closely related to the IRB, has left recently and left things in a bit of understaffing anyway. And I think that's reflected here in that there's far fewer people who are very satisfied, some who are still satisfied, but now we're starting to see a signal in the dissatisfied and very dissatisfied realm. Hopefully, as we go forward and things stabilize a little bit more, things will improve in terms of the IRB. Here are some of the comments down the bottom. I chose these simply because there was a large shift in satisfaction. It used to be much better and way faster. The pace seems to have slowed. Takes a long time. We've had some issues opening studies in a timely manner. These are things that are sort of obvious that we want from the IRB is to be efficient and turn it over quickly and to obviously do a good job. But I think Mark and his team are up to the challenge to improve things as we go forward. Next is, how satisfied are you with the outcomes research support, like clinical trial design, epidemiology, biostats, informatics at Ochsner? You see the distribution here, very satisfied, and satisfied being there, but also neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. Okay, next. And the distribution was essentially the same nowadays. There were a lot of good comments that were made about specific people, including Dan Fort and Professor Burton, who's on the line with us here today. So there are a lot of shining stars. How satisfied are you with the grant writing support provided within Ochsner Research? There's a lot of answers that were not applicable, and I think that speaks to the fact that we have a lot of people who are doing outside sponsored research rather than homegrown research within. However, nowadays, people are very satisfied or satisfied in general. The majority are anyway. So at least that's going in the right direction. Now, how satisfied are you with research, mentorship, and programs to train physician scientists at Ochsner? This was a question that we asked in 2021. I think this is sort of an area in which we are lacking. We don't have a lot of specific training to do research here at Ochsner, and we can improve upon that. That's my own editorialism. This year we broke it down into two different parts though, because we wanted to know if one, we were training our staff physicians to do a good amount of research, and also whether we were meeting our educational mission to teach our trainees. So here the training staff physicians comes back with very satisfied or satisfied. And if we look here at training trainees, we have more of a bell curve. I think this is an area that will, especially as we go forward with Exicom, et cetera, that we're going to want to build this quite a bit. How satisfied are you with business development efforts that, for example, the identification of clinical trial opportunities provided by Ochsner Research? Again, a bell curve with a lot of people saying neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, and today essentially the same. How satisfied are you overall in your experiences conducting research at Ochsner? In 2021, I guess more than a third were satisfied, and some people very satisfied, but there were some people who were less satisfied than that. I'm happy to say that we have seen quite a bit of left shift here, such that there are more people who are very satisfied or satisfied. Nobody answered very dissatisfied, which is nice, but still there's some dissatisfaction, and we'll have to use the free text responses in order to help to figure out what the sources of that dissatisfaction is. Those were the questions that were repeated from 2021. Does anybody have any comments on those before we go on to the new questions for this year? Hearing none. First of the new questions, are you familiar with the changes in residual fund handling that occurred in the past 2 years? Remember, we changed things such that we're much more communist or socialist, and the residual funds are now redistributed. Yeah, syllable. To among the centers of excellence, and it's not necessarily the case that if someone's one particular PI's study performs well, that PI gets to hold on to the residual funds. And we did this, of course, in order to encourage more forward-thinking research and proactive use of those funds rather than allowing them to sit idle for years. And so that happened over the past 2 years. And so the first question was, are you familiar with the changes in residual fund handling that occurred? And you see the distribution here. Some were very familiar, some were somewhat, and 40%, or 2/5, were not familiar, I guess, at all about those changes.
Did you ask them how many of those people attended a PRC meeting?
It's a good question. I hope more come, I guess, maybe as a result of this. Although I would imagine that the people who chose to answer questions might overlap, somewhat. Hopefully, as many people come to the PRC as possible, going forward. In any case, when people answered very or somewhat familiar, they also got this question, which is, are you satisfied with how your COE decided to utilize the residual fund funds? And as you know, or as anybody who has come to a PRC meeting knows, each COE is able to use those funds however they want. We have a variety of different models. I'll show them at the end as well. We also have these data broken down. Jeff did this for me earlier today. I don't have it to show you today, but I have these data broken down by COE. And I'm going to provide that to each of the COE directors so that they have a pulse of their constituents. Although N is only 28 here, so it's sort of very few. The next thing was a rank order voting in order to identify changes as we go forward and evolve in our the way that we handle research with Exicom, et cetera, here at Ochsner. I wanted to rank the potential changes that would result in an increase in your research production. And respondents were given all of these potential changes, as you can see up here, and they were asked to rank them from 1 to 10. These are the results. It's a bunch of numbers, but we tried to synthesize them for you. And the one way that I synthesized this group is I looked at the top 3. And these are the categories that received either 13 or 14 votes in the top 3. You can see that dedicated research time was the #1 first ranked thing among these, followed by greater recognition by leadership, showing that it's important that our leadership recognizes the importance of research to our faculty members. Next is more available CRC support, which is an ongoing issue that we're dealing with. And surprisingly, help with manuscript prep and publishing is there. I guess indicating that people want to write, but maybe they don't have as much experience with it and need some help. Other ways that we've hashed these out, this is number of surveys on which the item was ranked highest, and again, dedicated research time ranked first, followed by CME allowance and greater recognition by leadership, which we talked about. And then this is a summary of the number of surveys on which the item was ranked in the top 5. And that changes things a little bit because everybody recognizes that CRCs are important. But again, appearing quite high is greater recognition by leadership of the importance of research in order to encourage our faculty to perform research. I think you're going to get what you incentivize, and that's part of recognition, right? Part of recognition is incentivizing our faculty to perform research. And I think we're recognizing more and more that research at Ochsner can't be a hobby. It has to become part of our jobs. And I know I'm speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir right now. But I think the more we say it, the more valuable that'll be. And remember, there were questions that were totally free text, and I've just taken the headings of these, the first few respondents. So whoever was respondent number 3, congratulations, you are featured highly on this screen just by virtue of appearing first. What aspects of research support are currently working well? And we have 20 or so respondents of that. You can see the other things down here. If you could change one thing about research is conducted at Ochsner, what would it be? What's important to you about your relationship with research administration, research leadership, and how could your relationship with research administration and research leadership be improved? And we will be looking, as a PRSC, we'll be looking at all of these as well. Here's something that I wanted to point out is question number 17. How should research at Ochsner evolve? And you see we have quite a few different bits of wisdom from all of our respondents. One of my favorites is down here. Respondent number 46 wrote a bit here, and I'll say that I think they brought up a lot of very good points. Like, it seems that the organization is losing a lot of great people at all levels lately because we simply can't or won't compete. Recruiting and retaining the best is essential. We need to make research a priority at all levels. And there has to be clinical integration between research and clinical work. And every patient needs to be viewed as a research patient. We need to fix research finance. We're working on that, of course. We need to give researchers support and autonomy. And we need real research advocate at the executive level. We do have Leo on the line, and hopefully he will be able to, not necessarily speak to that today, but also, but unless he wants to, but also to be.
I'll just say I didn't take it personal.
Very good. Well, we're happy that we have you, and we're especially happy that you're listening today to what the PRC and the PRSC have to say. So those are the results, or at least the high-level results of the Pulse survey that we've performed. This is just the very beginning, and the PRSC is going to be looking at it in much more depth. But I wanted to see if anybody had any thoughts or ideas about what I've shown so far.
We are in oncology, as you probably know, we are pioneering or piloting a model that looks to create space for people who want to be investigators by providing them with protected time. And so I think that, again, we'll really see if we can make that happen, because if we can establish a institutional model for that, that can then be transported across different COEs, that'd be very powerful.
Agree,
Sure.
and I'm watching your pilot carefully.
Neurosciences is also doing that, and we're working on that in cardiology as well.
I mean, Dan, thanks so much for putting this together. I think this definitely gives a lot of great data to begin to start to initiate discussion, start to look at multiple different ways of things to improve everyone's experience in conducting research. And, we had a day-long retreat on physician compensation last Friday, and I can tell everybody, I mean, this kind of, these were topics that were woven into the discussions of how do we move forward. And I think as we talk more and more about Exicom and the academic evolution, I think we recognize that this is all going to have to be part of it. So I think a lot more discussion will be had.
Can't wait to hear about the results of that. All right, in the remaining time that we have here, I want to remind everybody that we do have the Physician Research Steering Committee, which is originally designed to be a smaller, more nimble group that could help to make decisions quickly if need be for in terms of research. We have 15 physicians that are on there. It has recently been decided that this group is going to subsume another group, which is somewhat overlapping with this group, and that is the directors of research for each of the centers of excellence. This is going to require some changes in the makeup of this group, and as you may be aware, we tend to rotate people on and off of this, over time. The bylaws, as it says right now, says that the term can be between 2 and 6 years. Some of these people on here are original members of the PRSC, and so we'll be talking about that, going forward. Now, that said, I have been the chair of the PRSC and PRC for 2 years, and my tenure is coming to an end. So going forward will be a few different things. One is that from the PRSC, all of the PRSC are eligible to run for this position, the chair of the PRSC and PRC. And we'll be doing that in the weeks to come. And in addition, all of you members who are here with us, and actually anybody who listens to the recording, if you are interested in moving from the PRC and actually also participating in the PRSC, we will also be taking nominees, including self-nominees, for whatever number of vacant spots we have on the PRSC going forward. So watch for that going forward. We'll be very interested in hearing from you if you are interested in serving. Was that clear how I just described it? Even though it's a little nebulous and present for when it's going to happen exactly, but we'll make it happen. Okay. I want to remind you that the COEs have all put together plans for use of their residual funds. This is the same thing that I showed last time. But I think now is the time of year when we need to start to think about whether we're going to change the way that we use residual funds from this year that need to be used starting in January. Because remember, the residual funds need to be spent during a calendar year. So the funds that we will be given access to, Randy's going to tell us probably in November or so, what each of the different COEs will be able to distribute to its members in whatever way they want. Once that distribution occurs, or once those monies are promised, starting on January 1st, you really got to hit the ground running and start to perform, your research, because by December 31st, 2025, if you haven't used your money, it goes away, which is a weird thing to think about, but that is the way that it is, and I don't think it's mutable, according to my financial expert.
And we want everybody to spend the money.
Right. That was and so the comment was, we want everybody to spend the money, and that's absolutely the case. That's why this change was made, because the money was sitting and not doing anything prior to 2 years ago. We will have our next meeting about 3 months from now in November. And at that time, I'll probably hand the gavel over to the next person.
And you're going to send out an email for nominations for the different committees?
For sure. I'll probably copy the one that you sent out originally. Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Don't fool around. I get it done.
You don't even know.